Hello, everyone. This is Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ. I'd like to welcome you to today's CUGC Connect webinar with Login VSI and IGEL. We've got a lot of good information today about ensuring the performance and security of remote workforces. So I know that is a super relevant topic right now. But before we dive into it, just want to make you aware of a few CUGC events that we have coming up. Obviously, we're still doing our local meetings, but not in person. So be sure to check out our events calendar. I put a link in the chat for you already. All of our local groups are meeting virtually. So we've got stuff popping up all the time. And I'm happy to say that our Excel meetings are finally back. We had to take a pause on those. Those are our day-long CUGC meetings that we have multiple speakers. They're really, really great events, and we are so sad that we can't travel around the countries and be in person, but we are setting up those days as virtual events, and we've got 2 coming up. So next week, the UK group meets online, and then in July, our first big one in the United States is CUGC Excel Great Lakes. So all of that's on our events calendar, and I'd love for you to check it out. All right, so today's webinar is, did I say webinar? Webinar is being recorded. Love that that's going to be on the recording. You will get a link to the recording. It's going to come to you in an email from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. You'll get it tomorrow afternoon. Also, we'd love for you to submit your questions throughout the webinar. I believe we're going to take most of them after the presentation. So submit them when you have them so you don't forget them, but I think we're going to save them for the end. And also at the end of today's session, I will put a link in the chat to a short survey just to get your feedback on today's webinar. Okay, so for all those questions that you guys are going to be typing in, because I know you're going to have so many, we have Martin Therkelson. He is a CTP. And Martin, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Yeah, hello, good evening. Hope you have a lot of great questions for tonight, and it's going to be an exciting webinar, so have fun.
Thanks. So type all your questions in, keep Martin busy. All right, and with us today from Login VSI, we have Blair Parkhill. He's the Director of Products, and we also have Jeff Kahlberg, a Technology Evangelist with IGEL. Guys, I'm going to hand things right on over to you. I think I'm handing the screen straight over to Jeff to get us started. So here it comes.
I think that's correct. So I'll go ahead and show my screen, and we'll go ahead and start the presentation here. Come on. I guess first thing I'm going to sit here and say is, Stephanie, you didn't tell me that this is the actual Cincinnati meeting.
Oh, no, not right now. Sorry, Cincinnati's later.
It's later today. Very good.
Yep, later today. Sorry, I should have called that out. I wasn't even reading the slide when I said it.
All right, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and I think this should be good. You can see the slides. Hopefully you can see the presentation okay.
Looks great.
That being said, we're going to go ahead and talk about we're ensuring the performance of security of a remote workforce. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide, which doesn't seem to be working. Let's go here. All right. Blair?
Well, thanks, Jeff. Yep, Blair Parkhill. I am the U.S. product manager for Login VSI, and have presented at a number of CUGCs, and again, feel blessed and privileged to be able to speak to you today.
And my name is Jeff Kahlberg, Technology Evangelist with IGEL Technology, based in Cincinnati, Ohio, which we'll talk about in a second. Many years working with Citrix, going back to the WinView days. So been around for quite a while, working with IGEL for nearly 20 years. So how do we work today? So as I mentioned before, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. IGEL Technology is headquartered in the United States in San Francisco. We're a German company, so our worldwide headquarters and all of our development happen in Germany. When I sit down to go to work every day, I work obviously a lot of my time in Office 365. and doing a lot of email and presentations and such. I spend my day working in Microsoft's Windows Virtual Desktop. From time to time, I'll play with Citrix Managed Desktop as well, but my primary workspace is using that same experience directly with to Microsoft. Running it all on IGEL OS on our product called a UD3. This is a picture of my desk. And off to the left-hand side, just briefly, they'll see to the left of my monitor, you actually see a UD3 there. As I use Teams and Zoom both, locally running on the UD3. When I'm in a GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting, I run that actually inside my virtualized environment. Blair?
Cool, thanks, Jeff. Yep, I live actually in Woodland Park, Colorado. However, I came down to Costa Rica about 4 months ago and haven't been able to get home since. So I'm presenting to you from Costa Rica. Unfortunately, today we won't have all the birds that we had during our last CUGC meeting. Maybe some motorcycles and stuff, so excuse the noise in the background. Our headquarters are in Boston and Amsterdam, so we're a kind of a global company. And I've been working from home for since I started with Login VSI about 5.5 years ago, and have primarily used Office 365 through a number of different endpoints. VPN when I need to get to the lab, and RDP when I need to get to other labs within that. I make use primarily of Intel NUCs. In Costa Rica, the power is not that reliable, so a UPS and an AVR, advanced or automated voltage regulator are essential. And to get to the office every day, I use my other Costa Rican essential called the Machete. And you can see a picture of my desk here. I work in a cooperative workspace in Uvita, Costa Rica. So Jeff, let's move on. So as we all know, we have the way that we used to kind of do our work, and a lot of that happened within the walls of our premises. But today things have changed considerably, meaning that we're looking at working from home, and you can see through the red arrows, we're putting a lot of pressure on those connectivity devices, the network devices that allow us to kind of get back into the data center. Whereas when we were on-prem, we had plenty of network resources to load balance and to, very quickly get us to the resources we need. So as you can imagine, there are a lot of challenges that are presented today with this complete flip of where we're working from. And next slide. And of course, that level of the work from home volume is the thing that we're kind of focused on, because it's made us kind of have to look at things a little differently. And with that look comes change, right? And change is really where I think we're all being consumed right now as we kind of adapt to these new styles of working. And that's what we're going to be covering today, is how do you adapt to that change in a secure and fast way. So Jeff, I'll let you take this one.
So as I've been around for all these years, one of the things that's being clear today since the COVID-19 thing has hit is that companies have stepped up and they're leveraging their Citrix enterprise and their solutions in their environment, okay, to connect to sending people home, okay, and having people connect back to that on-prem resource. This happened almost overnight. In talking with various companies, what we found and what we've heard is that people that had been saying, hey, we're going to start to look at a virtual desktop environment. At some point, maybe this is going to be a 2021 project or a 2022 project. To get out any further than that, it's hard to call it anything a project. Everything changes so quickly. But the point being is all of a sudden, we were forced into these long-term projects, these experiments, sending people home quickly, overnight. How do we do that? Those that were Citrix customers already, kind of knew how to go about that, although they perhaps needed infrastructure, they needed equipment, they needed servers and things that weren't available, so that the cloud came into play pretty quickly. But companies are absolutely, expanding their Citrix usage tremendously in many, many ways. So. And as we see,
they're getting pretty creative with those too, huh, Jeff? How
Absolutely.
They use their Citrix resources to maybe map to the desktops that may still be on-prem. The customers that I've been talking to are getting a lot of directives from upper management, right? As we no longer, for some, have the capability to get to the office and manage the gear that's on-prem, we have to quickly adapt to, well, what's out there? How can we move our infrastructure to a place where somebody else is managing the hardware while we stay on top of the solutions that we have put on top of that? So obviously that leads us to solutions like Windows Virtual Desktop. And we've been working with Microsoft for quite some time and know that the Windows Virtual Desktop Win 10 Enterprise Multi-Session has been kind of top of mind for many enterprises. And it's being consumed quite heavily at this point as a stopgap and potentially even future solution for a lot of companies that are forced to kind of change their model, not only to a way to allow users to log in remotely, but also to allow the IT administrators and operations staff to work with gear that's managed by somebody else, like Microsoft and Azure.
Yeah, one of the things, Blair, just on this topic specifically, because the Windows Virtual Desktop, it's really quite unique. I mean, Microsoft has validated what Citrix has been talking about for years, by saying, hey, run Citrix in the cloud, or Windows in the cloud. And so what we have found, because I do work closely with Microsoft on the development of what they're doing back there, but every week I also have a standing call with senior engineers down in Fort Lauderdale to talk about the Citrix managed desktop. Okay, and what we've been finding in the industry, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Blair, is that a lot of people are going out and looking at Windows Virtual Desktop, but it falls down in a lot of ways. It's not Citrix still corners the market in terms of capability for remoted functions and applications and application management and those pieces. So while Windows Virtual Desktop is garnering all this attention, it's truly the Citrix managed desktop, which is Windows Virtual Desktop Citrix style. Is a really, really, really interesting and a good solution, and we see a lot of people adopting that.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
So a lot of issues. So sending all these people at home overnight has created some real interesting challenges. It's not just about sending people home. We don't have the equipment to send them home with. We don't have laptops sitting around. We don't have products sitting around. So we tell them to go home and we tell them to use their PC and use the browser and connect to Citrix. Well, what's happened is because people have gone home and they're working from home, IT department doesn't have control over what they're doing or what they're using anymore. So this whole concept of shadow IT and people making their own decisions about connectivity or devices to connect with or other applications that might be on their device, this has all of a sudden created a huge security risk. There have been a major increase in exploits, and people trying to get access to corporate IT environments through these work-at-home users. So it is absolutely presented an interesting challenge. And then, of course, I mentioned before, the hardware. I mean, it's not like we sent home, 5,000 people or 4,000 people to go work at home, and we had 4,000 PCs for them to take. So it's a challenge, and conferencing. Not everybody was signed up and ready to go home and use Teams or to use Zoom, for conferencing purposes. So everybody jumped onto those things. As we see companies like Zoom go from maybe 20, 30 million users to 200 million users overnight. It was rather interesting exercise for them. They've responded well. So other issues, VPNs, load balancers. Go ahead.
Oh, just going to say, probably the same as you. These are the devices now that everybody's got to target, right, and be able to connect through. And of course, really the only way to manage that type of volume is to use things like load balancers to spread out that across multiple networking devices. But they weren't sized for the volumes that they're seeing today. So they are, being used so heavily that they are starting to diminish the user experience, and therefore, new solutions need to be put in place to handle that. And then, of course, scaling unknowns are a big lesson for many of us, right? If we're looking for some type of stopgap measure, we've got to take those changes and consume them very quickly before we kind of completely lose out on productivity. But the problem is, you know, if we're moving from one infrastructure to another, scaling can be a big unknown. And knowing how many sessions I can get for a particular instance could be challenging. And also the compatibility that comes with that. So if I move from Windows 10 1803 to something like a Windows Virtual Desktop 1909, do my applications work? And if I use that the Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session Platform, you know, again, is it going to work? And what's going to happen after updates happen? And will my applications continue to work? So these are just some of the issues that we're seeing, and also some of the issues that the work that Login VSI with our Login Enterprise product and IGEL have been doing together for over a year now in combining our solutions for the benefit of all of you to be able to kind of assess and validate these changes that we're putting in place. If that includes new architectures or if that just includes changes to existing, you know, it's important to validate that and continuously make sure that those resources are available and up to speed and not diminishing in their delivery. So let's take a look at the product real quick and see how they can be merged together to deliver that.
So a little bit of background here. Let's take you through IGEL and IGEL, where we came from. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here for a lot of people on this call, but at the time, end user computing consisted of people sitting in an office, sitting at a desk, all by themselves. Along the way, as time evolved, a little company called Citrix, we evolved and provided a way, okay, to connect to that office from remote locations, which allowed us to send people home or to take care of remote offices and have them connect back to the home office, okay? And then, of course, naturally, once we had that in place, we could send people off with laptops and whatever devices they might have, and they maybe work in a hotel or in a Starbucks, and maybe they're using modems, maybe they're using LTE, maybe they're actually using a broadband connection, whatever the case may be. But the world has changed, and Citrix was there to provide that connecting, that glue for bringing everybody back home to the office. VMware decides to get into the game, and VMware provides infrastructure for all the virtualization. So we saw a lot of Citrix workloads, which in the early days was all running on discrete hardware, was all of a sudden be able to be virtualized, okay? And it could get there's still a lot of Citrix workloads running on top of VMware for the scalability of increasing Citrix resources at a moment's notice. Amazon comes along and say, hey, let's put those workloads in the cloud. And there's a lot of Citrix running on Amazon, as you know, and there's a whole lot of Citrix running on Microsoft Azure. And of course, Google, not to be left alone, says, hey, we want to be in this game as well. Although I haven't seen a lot of business workloads running on the Google Cloud side of things. So it's out there, and it is a player because it's part of the whole end user infrastructure and how we use Citrix to get applications and desktops to end users. The problem with all of this, moving this stuff to the cloud, is all those devices that were sitting down at home and in the office and in the Starbucks or on the beach in Aruba, okay, they're all there, but those changes brought along challenges around that security we talked about updating devices, about managing these devices. If I send all these people running around with PCs, how do I manage those devices, those laptops? The costs associated with that. Okay, and the compatibility and such with existing cloud workspaces. So somebody like IGEL comes along and say, hey, you know what? We have an operating system. If you're moving all your workload into the cloud and you're going to use Citrix to connect to everything, okay, there's really no reason or nor does anybody really want to have Windows running on the endpoint anymore because it's expensive and it's hard to manage. So we come along and IGEL says, hey, listen, let's take all those devices that are out there that you have at home or in those offices or everywhere. Okay, and let's replace the operating system with that on those devices with the operating system that IGEL's put together over 20 years of development. Okay, and that IGEL OS is an operating system specifically tuned for connecting to Citrix and other resources. And with that operating system comes an incredible management tool that allows us to control and oversee all those devices in incredible ways, as if they were sitting in the office next to you. You have that kind of access to these devices using this management plane. So this is, in our opinion, IGEL's way. It's a much better way of approaching the world. So who is IGEL? IGEL is now a 30-year-old company, and today we are the creator of the next generation edge operating system for cloud workspaces. Okay, we refer to our software as IGEL OS, so because the world needs another iOS. So the IGEL operating system is specifically designed. And what's unique about it is it's extremely simple to manage. It's very familiar. We'll share it with you in a minute. It's smart. Marketing says you have to have 3 words. So we've got simple, smart, secure. Smart in the sense that IGEL approach to things is going to save you a lot of money. It's money that can be spent in other places, or money that maybe you can retain, because people are trying to hold on to cash today as we work our way through all of the COVID stuff and everything else that's going on, at least in the United States and the world. So anyway, we have this operating system very tightly tuned in and merged with Login VSI to provide an experience that is optimal for an end user. So what is the IGEL OS? Again, I mentioned it's about minimizing costs. Okay, it is not specific to any hardware. So IGEL, while we grew up out of a thin client company, physical thin clients are not who we are. It's the software that's on what would be our thin clients, or software that would be wherever it might be running. Okay, it's extremely secure. It's modular. It's easy to customize. Okay, so it's an operating system for the edge. Okay, it's engineered for the enterprise. So what does this mean? Well, it's an operating system, IGEL OS. A lot of people today, I'd say approaching 70% of everything IGEL sells in terms of unit sales is the operating system. People buy and license the IGEL OS to install it on their existing PCs, their existing laptops. If they have thin clients, if those thin clients are no longer being supported or they want better management, they'll install the IGEL OS on those thin clients as well. Okay. We also have a live USB stick we call the IGEL UD Pocket. Okay, it's a portable device. It's the IGEL software running on that USB stick. So you boot a device, I call it a parasite. You boot a device with this USB stick. Okay, it runs from the USB stick. The local hard drive is not available. It's not used. Nothing is ever installed on it. And then, of course, we have our physical thin clients. We simply just refer to those as the IGEL Universal Desktops. Okay, with all that comes the IGEL management system, okay, which is extremely granular, easy to use. You can think about group policy and how group policy works. It's very much similar in the UMS. It runs pretty much the same way, okay. The IGEL with the management system, okay, you can customize the IGEL and you can adapt that IGEL operating system to behave the way you want it to be. You can brand it, you can add functionality. It's extremely powerful, extremely flexible. Okay, all of this scales on up through a management system that also supports high availability. So it's the kind of management system where you might have a server running in Azure, database running in Azure. You might have a cloud gateway running on AWS, okay, which is a secure connecting point. And then all of that comes the ability to extend the UMS through an API. So people have taken the IGEL management system and integrated it with say, for example, ServiceNow. Okay, or their own tools for internal use. And we can take all of that, okay, and we can manage everything through something we call the IGEL Cloud Gateway, which gives you access to every single device that you own. If it's connected to the network being the internet, you'll have complete control of that device wherever it exists in the world. So we weren't going to talk about this slide, but I will mention it since we're there. We'll talk about the IGEL chain of trust. Okay, we're starting at the hardware level all the way up to the point where you're connected to a cloud. Okay, we check and recheck and confirm, okay, that the device that is being used is completely validated through signing and other checks that we've built into our operating system. Everything's encrypted and secured and connected in a secure fashion. So, a little bit about our alliance partners. This is just a look at some of the partners that we have out there. Of course, we see Citrix in the top left. But if you're into any kind of communications, some of the names like Plantronics and Sennheiser and Nuance and Cisco and Jabra are all familiar names to you. And when it comes to validating and monitoring, we have Login VSI down the left-hand side and all sorts of technologies on the right. This is just a look at some of the additional. We go to the next slide, we get a better look at some of these other brands that we work with. And I'll just kind of leave you with that. Go back and review this later if you want. So. Economics 101, I do like to share this. If you move Citrix to Citrix Managed Desktop, you're going to be taking care of Windows Virtual Desktop as well. So it comes with some interesting savings along the way. Okay, so if you were to move and go take advantage of something like Citrix Managed Desktop, okay, this is a slide that came out of Microsoft in terms of the savings that you recognized when you go from, say, a straight terminal services environment running, say, on Azure and moving it over to, say, Citrix Managed Desktop running it on Azure. Okay, you see the savings. The more important reason for this slide is I like to show people what it means from an IGEL perspective. So if you have 10,000 workstations, okay, and you move to an IGEL solution, you're gonna find is that we help you save money along the way. So for example, PCs today, they'll run fine as a display device probably for the next 10 or 12 years. Okay, so if you replace the operating system that's on those edge devices with IGEL, you're going to push out the replacement of that hardware from 3 years to 5 years or 6 years, 7 years. Okay, cost to deploy an IGEL device. A standard PC, it's a couple hours, to get a regular PC out and about in front of somebody so that it's usable, at least a couple of hours. Okay, when you move everything to the cloud, we're looking at minutes, 15 to 30 minutes tops. Okay, so savings on the deployment side. What we found is people that have gone back and kept the records were able to study what happens on the support side of things. We see anywhere from 50 to 60, 65% reduction in tickets, okay, help desk tickets, because you remove the operating system from the edge and put it in the data center. These are huge numbers, okay? Obviously, when you could put an edge device out there, you replace it with something like the IGEL management system, which we don't charge for, okay? That helps reduce those licensing costs as well. And then, of course, a PC as a PC versus a PC as a display device reduces power. And in the end, in an IGEL solution, a workstation of 10,000 users can result in the savings as much as 50. Well, by our calculation, using the numbers, real life data, it's about $53 a month of savings. So it's big savings. Okay. Login VSI, go ahead.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so and we're getting to this merge point where IGEL and Login VSI make sense, and I can't wait to show you the demo for this because it's really a cool solution. But I think from a Login VSI perspective, of course, with all the security benefits that we get with IGEL, we also get this ease of use benefit. We're all about making things easier for our customers. And we want to support you in making sure that your environments are safeguarded and healthy and operating and always available. Now, with the change in the paradigms that we use to connect to our resources at work, and just an overall technology stack of virtualization, especially in the desktop realm, it gets really complex, right? You have a number of things that can change. And as you move to a cloud-based resource, or as you move to something that's very different, and Jeff, next up, there you go. As you move to this different paradigm in remote computing, all of these layers in the stack are subject to change, right? Your network may change because of how your VPNs are configured. Your remoting protocol may change as you move from connecting to on-prem resources to WVD through a different connector type. All of these things have the potential to change. And with that change, you could be, again, impacting the performance or availability of your solutions. Moving these resources to a cloud-based environment, kind of takes away a number of those objects in the stack that you have control over. But the nice thing is, you have Microsoft or Amazon or Google all taking care of that part of the stack for you in some ways. And in this case, the yellow box represents more of a WVD context where they're supplying the Windows operating system along with all of the additions that come with that to keep it secure, safe, and up to speed. So there's a lot of stuff that can change, but we're here to talk about how we can help you manage all of that. Now, when we're talking about change, there's not just the change that we're making right now. There's changes in the future. So we can think of the change management lifecycle in that case, where we are asked to submit a change, or we have a regular occurring change, or we're moving to a completely new infrastructure. And what we want to do is make that change and then validate that change before it goes live. That way, you know that the changes I made to my image, whether I changed Windows operating system versions or if I tuned the environment a little differently, I want to validate those things before I push them live. Because the last thing we want is to make those changes and have our productive workforce turn into a zero productivity workforce. After we push them live, though, there's again a number of things that can happen, and we want to continuously make sure that we're kind of not just monitoring, but testing those connections, testing that environment as it's in production. And then, again, we're going to come back around the top and incorporate changes to compensate for that, validate again, and you kind of get the idea of the cycle here. And you can see a number of things in the peripheral on the left and right that have been well-known changes that have certainly impacted us pretty heavily in terms of performance. So there we go with the next slide, Jeff. So how do we do that at Login VSI? We have what we call virtual users. Virtual users emulate real human users as they interact with the desktop and with the applications. And so this human behavior is what we call our virtual user. It's a software component. And this virtual user can go through the workflows of your real users, clicking on the applications, typing in information, doing searches and queries, watching videos, making PowerPoint presentations. All of those daily behavior workflows can be reproduced quite easily using the software. And then we have the opportunity to not only perform those interactions with the application and desktop, but our virtual users can feel how long it takes, down to milliseconds. How long does it take the application to open, or how long does it take to do a search, or how long does it take to type things? So it's basically getting a feel for, am I slowing down, speeding up, are things still available? And so you get all of this in a package called Login Enterprise that's easy to deploy. It's wizard driven. We use a virtual appliance for this. So we've taken your install and go time from hours down to minutes. It's more than a logon, so we're not just logging into the environment and recording that. We're also interacting with applications. And by the way, the product comes with a number of application interactions that come with the product. So you don't have to build your own scripts or anything like that. And that's for Edge, Chrome, Adobe. We'll go back, Jeff, real quick. And all of the most popular productivity apps. And the other thing is, we're not just testing one application and then going away, right? We're testing all of the applications that are important in that workspace as they exist in that workspace. And then lastly, if you're an enterprise that needs a custom application, have a line of business application that's specific to you, we do have the opportunity to quite easily build customized workloads to include your business critical applications in those workflows. So you basically get the best of both worlds. Rich desktop interaction as well as application interaction, all timed and reported. So there we go, Jeff. Now we have 3 capabilities in our product. The first is application compatibility and functional testing. The reason why we have this is because we want our virtual users to get a feel for how our applications work after we do something like a Windows OS upgrade. So if I'm moving from Windows 10 1803 to Windows 10 1909, I want to know, do all of my applications still work? And if I have hundreds of applications, as you can imagine, it could take weeks to test all of those. What this function does is it can quickly test hundreds of applications in minutes. It can make sure that they open. It can report how fast it takes them to open. It can also do bitmap stores where it can, it can show you what that application looks like after it successfully starts. So there's a number of things that you can quickly go through after an image update that will tell you, are my applications healthy or not? And if they're not, which ones do I need to focus on? Because the last thing we want to do is spread our time across 95% of the apps that work and miss an opportunity to catch that 5% of the apps that may not. So like I said, in minutes, you can go through that entire suite and get a report that will say these apps are working and these apps aren't. So that's the application compatibility testing function. Usually that's the first thing I'll do before this part of the test, which is load testing. So once I know my image is good and all my applications are good, and again, that application test can be something you share with your application development teams too. And so after you get that report back and your image is good, you want to make sure that that new image in that new format performs the same way that the last image did. And if it doesn't, you want to know, does it perform faster, or in most cases, it performs slower because this Windows 10 update requires more resources. And at scale, I need a consistent way to tell me at this scale, doing this same thing, I can get this number of sessions versus the last time. So it gives me a very objective way to say, hey, I can only get this number of sessions on this compute resource at this time. So a really good way to make sure that you're not going to overload the systems after updates. And then after you do the application load test and the infrastructure load test there, then the last part of this paradigm in the change management process is continuous availability and performance testing. So imagine that you set up a workflow that you've been using for your app testing, for your load testing, and now you're happy with the way everything is. You want to roll it into production, and after you roll it into production, everything went great, right? You're a rock star. You got everything deployed successfully, and everybody's happy. But over the course of the month, ISPs have started to slow down. My routers may have been overloaded or consumed somehow. And I need a way to be able to continuously test in that production environment with the same virtual user and those same workflows. So that's what this part of the test is. It's basically a virtual user that can log in from any remote location around the world to that compute resource or that desktop pool, and it will report on, can I get to the resource? Can I log in? After I log in, can I get to my apps? And if I can get to my apps, are they performing the same as they were in the past? And we're basically doing this test 24/7 by 365, so you always can get more of a proactive approach to when things are starting to slow down. And remember, virtual users are very sensitive to change. So if it slows down 100 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds, 20 seconds, whatever you'd like to kind of trigger on, if it starts to slow down, we can tell you before your real users start noticing those things. Or if your real users aren't working because it's midnight, right? This virtual user can still be doing that test, and if there's a problem that happens while everybody's out of the office, you could know about it and kind of attack that problem before those users come back into the office in the morning. So these are the three components of our solution. Today, we're going to do a quick demo for you, and I just want to kind of give you a quick heads up on what the architecture looks like and what this demo is going to do. So the first thing that happens is using the IGEL UMS, what we're going to do is kind of tell that IGEL endpoint, and you can see the launcher down here in Costa Rica. That's the one I have sitting right beside me. And again, Jeff's in Ohio managing via the UMS. So what we're going to do is he's going to tell, I'm going to register my endpoint device with his UMS, and then he's going to push the login enterprise profile to my endpoint, and it's just going to start working. That's how easy it is. So once it starts working, then my login enterprise virtual appliance tells the launcher, hey, I want you to start a session with the WVD device that you're assigned to. And so the second step, or third step here, would be to connect to that pool, connect to that WVD resource, and after it's connected, it's going to log in and start using the apps. And that next step is effectively, as it's using the apps in the desktop, it's reporting on the performance and availability of all that. So what we're going to do is kind of roll all of this up into a quick demo and give you kind of a firsthand look at how easy it really is. So I think, Jeff, the next slide is the demo slide. So I think what we want to do is, Stephanie, if you could hand me the presentation rights. I want to show
hang on
people.
1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you hang on 1 second.
Yeah, that's
Do
great.
I still have it?
Nope, I got it. Okay.
All right.
So you should be able to see my endpoint device over here. Basically, we can kind of treat this as a brand new IGEL device. And I need to go through just a quick registration. So I'm just going to do the quick click next, all this good stuff. And I'm going to do that. And now all I need to do is connect to Jeff's IGEL Cloud Gateway. So that one is called azure-icg.igelcloud.com. That's as easy as it gets. So we're going to log in and see what other information I need to provide. Okay. So the structured tag allows us to associate a certain profile type with any new devices that connect. And then what I'm going to do is use the password that Jeff gave me. Go log in VSI. We can double check to make sure that I typed it in right. And it looks like it's all ready. So here we go. We're going to do next. And after we do that, click finish. Then actually, I can give it back to you, Jeff, and you can shadow it. But I think
I will
what
let
we'll
it.
see is this thing.
I think we can let it finish up here real quick.
Okay,
So,
cool. Yeah, actually, I'm not touching anything here. And I think what we'll see, Jeff, is the device kind of register with ICG Gateway. You can see it just got its new profile, all that cool stuff. And Jeff, before we fire off the launcher service, I'll hand it back to you, and then you can do that and take it from there. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll change the presenter to Mr. Jeff. Okay, there you go, buddy.
All right. So what's happened here, okay, is Blair has registered his system, okay, with the IGEL management, with my IGEL management system. Now let's put this in perspective. I'm sitting in Cincinnati. I'm using I told you earlier on, I'm using an IGEL UD3 connected to a virtual desktop that's happens to be running in Azure. In the East US data center. I also have my management system running in East US data center, and I also have this a secure connecting point we call the cloud gateway running in US East. And Blair has connected to that cloud gateway, which in turn brought his device into my management system. I have a section here called alliances. Now, by virtue of him using that code VSI when he registered his device, okay, he placed his device in the management system automatically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on this refresh icon, okay, and we're going to see his device show up right here, okay. One of the capabilities of this management system is the ability to shadow devices wherever they are in the world. So I'm going to go ahead and shadow his device, okay, and we connect to it. So here I am, okay, sitting in Cincinnati, okay, connected to, well, famous last words. This always happens when you do the demo, right? Let me try to shadow you again.
It'll work.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
is it there? If you look at your, there you go.
Oh, well, maybe. Look at this. Thank you. I forgot I had this running because I actually have another IGEL device that's under management as well. So here's another device here, but this is Blair's device. So here is the Citrix Workspace app he had running here. So if I wanted to launch, okay, the Login Enterprise launcher, I would simply go right here and click on this device, okay, and run down to some device commands, specific device commands. And I'm going to tell that system, Blair's system, to go ahead and launch, okay, that VSI emulator. So what's happening now, the tool he was talking about is going to go ahead and log in. It's collecting data on user experience, collecting data on applications. Okay, it's gonna make a connection, in this case an RDP connection, because it's all kind of self-contained. I think you're connecting to, I don't know where this server is actually sitting.
That's
But all this
actually
is happening automatically. I could be running this simultaneously against 1,000 different machines if I wanted to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and it'll just sit here and run. It'll work through, it'll bring up the browser, it'll bring up Excel, it'll do some work in Excel, some copies and pastes, and a variety of things. And this is just simply sitting here and running. So I go back all the way back to this, okay? So what happened here is Blair registered with this IGEL management system. Automatically, we profiled his devices. It showed up by virtue of him using that VSI code, because that's what he chose to use. Okay, we knew to place his device into this login VSI container. And by virtue of him this device being in that login VSI container, his device has received a configuration from the IGEL management system. Part of the configuration he received was the time server that he should be looking at, okay? The ability to shadow his device securely through our secure tunnels built up to manage devices, okay? I gave him a little local terminal device in case he wanted to get to a terminal. So maybe not something you would give to a normal end user. I got a Citrix Workspace connection. If I wanted to take a look at any of this configurations, I could actually go in and edit this Citrix Workspace. This is what we call a profile. Think about group policy and how you might create a policy and activate certain pieces of that policy. We would go in here, we go down to Citrix, we went to the Citrix storefront area, we went ahead, defined the server, pointing him to the demous.cloud.com, which is the Citrix demo server site. Okay. Stored some other information about desktop integrations and where this should appear on the IGEL desktop and such, just bits and pieces. If I wanted to activate USB, some native USB redirection, I could come activate that. If I wanted to do the multimedia redirection, HDX multimedia, I could tweak some of that. If I wanted to use unified communications and Skype for Business or Cisco Jabber, or it's not in this version here, but the version we'll be releasing here in July will also include Zoom for Citrix. All of those will be available in here under unified communications. But I create these profiles and associate with this device. Okay, so by virtue of him being in this container, he got this configuration, which allowed us to then go back, okay, and immediately start this process, okay, and which is still running back here. This runs for quite a while, I believe.
Yep.
A very powerful management tool.
24/7/365. So now all we had to do was again associated with his UMS, and it basically did everything else automatically from there. And like Jeff said earlier, you could do this with hundreds of devices at the same time. And as long as they're assigned with those profiles, they're all going to log in and do their thing. So with IGEL and Login Enterprise, it just has gotten extremely easy to make sure that you know what's going on in your environment.
All right, so we'll go back here to our little slides.
Yeah,
and I think what we wanted.
If I could,
go ahead.
I'd like to show the resulting pane. So if you want to hand back real quick.
Ooh, how do I do that?
Right?
Let's see here.
Oh, did that disappear? Oh, attendees. No?
Hang on.
There we go. There we go.
All right.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. So what you see in the resulting window here is that now that that's had a chance, that virtual user has had a chance to use the environment a little bit, we're starting to get some performance data, some availability data. We can look at things like login performance, you know, over the last 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. We just started, so we only get one data point now, but you can start to see, you know, what total login time is looking like. Display protocol connection time, that would be ICA connection time, profile loading, GPO processing. You basically start to get all of this information about logons. But as I had mentioned earlier, you get more than that, right? You get things like Microsoft Outlook. You can see here we're making sure that the app is starting in time. We've got a data point for that. And then if we want to look at other, you know, types of things that have multiple operations inside of a particular app, you can see how long does it take to open the application, how long does it take to open a window or print, or any of that stuff, right? So we're doing this, again, 24/7/365. If there's an issue, we also give you some additional data, like what was wrong. We take a screenshot if an application doesn't behave as expected. So you can quickly see, okay, something's going wrong. You know, this profile or this URL no longer works with let's just say a change that we made in routing or you know, gateways, something like that. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but right here, you got the first heads up that you have an issue and you know what that is. You can fix that issue before your real users feel it. So all of those are benefits that you get, you know, with this combined solution. So given that, I'm going to give the stage back to Jeff, and we can wrap up this presentation.
Cool. Let's see here. All right, so we'll come back. We'll show our screen here, and I think probably the biggest thing that we want to tell people here, how might you get started? So wake up. Okay, so obviously loginvsi.com/trial or loginvsi.com/IGEL. It gets you going with the VSI side of things. On the IGEL technology, you can go to igel.com/download or just igel.com and get access to our software. If you do go and you download the software and you install IGEL OS on an existing piece of equipment, okay, that software will immediately, you'll be able to start immediately using that software for 90 days, fully unrestricted, and you can test it out and test out Login VSI with it as well, and we're here to help you with that. So that being said, I think we're to the point where questions. So we've got about 10 minutes left, I think. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I think we can hand it back to Martin for that one.
There's a couple of questions, yeah. So the first one is, do you want to share your slides, especially the one about the economics? That's Scott's question.
Yes, we can do that.
Absolutely.
Great. Another one is the application load testing. Are you doing that against a testing image, or are you doing that on production, or both? How are you normally doing that at clients?
That's a good question. So the only testing that we're doing in production is the continuous availability testing. We're not doing the application load testing, nor are we doing the application compatibility testing. For a couple of reasons. Number one, the application compatibility testing happens after rolling out that change into production. Application load testing typically isn't done in production either. Number one, because we want to know what the performance of that change is going to look like before we roll it into production. But also number two, if you're going to be loading up a production server with hundreds or thousands even sessions, then that's going to compete with your production workload. So it's very important that you do not mix a load test with an active production system. Now, I will say, we have had some of our customers use their DR solutions. So they'll use their passive DR site, which technically is considered, part of a production environment. They will use their passive DR site to do some of those changes, but we typically don't recommend doing load testing in a production environment.
All right. Marcus is asking, what made you guys come together as an alliance? So IGEL and Login VSI, and how long ago did that happen?
About 1.5 years ago, and the answer to that question is easy. Customers. We had a very large financial institution here in the United States that wanted Login VSI to be able to support a Linux endpoint. And at the time, we didn't know they were talking about IGEL, and it didn't take too long for us to figure out that's who they were talking about. And so that all started with a very valued and very large financial company in the U.S.
And not to mention the fact that for years, we've constantly preached the fact that it's delivering an application today has gotten incredibly complex, and there's so many moving pieces, and it's so important to be able to tell, is everything, as you said, everything compatible? Is everything up to speed? Or where are the latencies? Where's the bottleneck? It's important to know these things in order to give an end user a really, really good experience.
Yeah. Adam is asking if you could provide more details about the IGEL OS. Not sure what exactly he's referring to, but if there's something more you can give on the IGEL OS.
Oh.
In the context of this conversation, if you want to be able to use a launcher with IGEL OS, you're going to need to choose a version greater than IGEL OS 11. So IGEL OS 11.01.100, I think, was the first. Was the first IGEL OS that supported the Login VSI, launcher, and then of course every version after that supports it will roll out compatibility with our latest releases. So,
So we have that, and on the IGEL specific side, it is an operating system where its first version came out in 1993. So it has evolved tremendously over the years, and as I've been personally involved with it for nearly 20 years, I kind of, whatever it is somebody wants to do, there's a really good chance that the IGEL operating system will support what they want to do the way they want to do it. So Citrix in the back end, all the features and functionalities that you would need from Citrix and want from Citrix is built into the IGEL. All the network security functions that that you would want in an operating system and an edge device is supported by IGEL. Printing capabilities, certificate enrollment, SCAP, and things like NDES, multi-monitors, accelerated graphics offloading, and it goes and goes and goes. So, I would encourage you to take a look. It is truly an amazing tool in all of its capabilities. So I won't take you through all the details. I'll talk for a month. We don't have that much time.
Another question about IGEL is you showed how to set it up at your site, and it required a password. If it's just shipping out a device to a regular user because of some major instance or something, could that be a personal password or a static password, or how can you do that the easiest way?
Or for connecting for management purposes?
Yeah, for
a user to connect. Yeah. So today, what we can do is you can actually go into the Agile management system. I think you still see my desktop, right?
Yeah.
And you can generate authentication keys. So I gave Blair his own kind of multi-use key, but if I want to come up with individual keys for users, okay, I can generate these individual keys. I just showed them right there. I can see them, but obviously you couldn't, or users can't. And then I can, if I wanted to distribute that, provided I connected my management system to my mail server, I could simply come here, highlight an authentication key, and I could send an email to the user, and they'd have all the instructions they need to connect.
Cool. Great. What else do we have?
We're working on ways to make that easier. Go ahead. Next question.
That's for Login VSI. Actually, you showed a great portal with all the results in it. Is that the way it's always shown? You got a Azure website, or is this something the customers need to stand up themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is part of the virtual appliance that the customers would stand up themselves. That can be stood up in Azure, that could be stood up on-prem. It can pretty much be stood up just about anywhere that you can consume an OVA virtual appliance or a VHDX, or in my case, it's an Azure VHD that we're deploying. So there's all of these different methods to deploy the virtual appliance, but that screen comes from that virtual appliance. Again, mine is in Azure. And the screen that you saw was what we call the dashboard. Of course, for any of the testing that we're doing, whether it's compatibility, load, or continuous testing, we also have graphs and charts that you can take a look at things, not just for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, but you can also look at days, weeks, months at a glance. And you can also get the graphs to also start predicting where might I be in a month if I continue a certain trend. So lots of different options to look at the data. And it's all available via RESTful API. So if you have other systems like ServiceNow or those types of systems, you can integrate and have a lot of the alerts as well as the data move to other avenues of consuming that data.
Great. I think that's it for the questions I can see in the chat now. And also we are approaching time as well, so maybe Stephanie should take it back.
Let's do it.
All right, I just have one last slide for you guys. Let me do that. Whoa, what happened? Let me go backwards. Okay, there we go. Too many clicks with the mouse. Also, I'm going to throw in the chat for you that survey link that I mentioned earlier. It's short, it's anonymous, and it's just for CUGC use only. We just like to get your feedback on our webinar, so hope you'll fill that out. If you opted in for a chance to win the wireless headset, we will announce the winner on Twitter. We want to be able to pull all of the attendees out of GoToWebinar, and I can't get all that information until after the webinar, so we'll do a random drawing and we'll announce that on Twitter. Otherwise, we hope you'll follow us on Twitter. That's the best way to stay up to date with everything that's going on with my CUGC. Love to see you visit us online as well. Check out your local group, see what's going on with them. Maybe check out our discussion forums. You might be able to help somebody out, or if you have a question, it's a great place to ask. And we've also got lots of great blogs, and then obviously more webinars, lots of great stuff for you on our website. And with that, I will return all of you to the rest of your day. I want to thank Jeff and Blair for being with us today. And thank you, Martin, for being on with us. Great to have you all here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I hope you all stay safe and well, and see you at another CUGC event soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.